Masechet Kiddushin Daf Tet Zayin. The Mishnah mentioned that a slave can be Eved Ivri, can be acquired with a contract. Ubishtar. Minalan, what's the source? Amar Ula, Amar Kera. Im acheret yikach lo. Hikisha hakatub le'acheret. Ma'acheret mikniya bishtar, af ama ivriya mikniya bishtar. We're talking about an ama ivriya, and we're assuming here that the same would be true for other types of Eved Ivri, that an ama ivriya who's sold by her father as a minor, they can be married off to the daughter of the owner. Now, if that husband should take another wife, the Torah says he has to make sure that he still has to provide for this Ama Ivriya who became his wife and give her she'era, kesuta, onata, everything that a regular wife deserves. Just because he marries another does not mean that he can then pay anything less to take care of his Ama Ivriya wife. Now, this pasuk says, Imacheret yikach lo. Yikach means regular kiddushin that he does with the other wife, and it compares that other regular wife to an ama ivriya who is acquired not through regular kiddushin, but rather by being acquired as an ama ivriya when she's a minor, and then being married off to the owner's daughter. So, since they are compared to each other, we can learn one law to the other. Just like that other wife can be acquired with a shtar, like any kiddushin, so too a ma'ivriya can be acquired with a shtar. All right, so that's Ula's derivation, and we accept it halfway. This derivation makes sense according to the opinion that says when an owner acquires an ama'ivriya, it's the master that writes the contract. Because according to that opinion, it's equivalent to a marriage case. Just like in a marriage case, it's the groom that writes a contract that says Hareat mikudeshet li and gives it to the wife or the father of the bride. So too here, it's the owner who's acquiring the ama ivriya that gives the contract to the father of the ama ivriya, and so it's a good parallel. So that's a good derivation. But this itself is subject to machloket. Ela leman damar av kotvo ma'ika lememar di itmar shtar ama ivriya mi kotvo Rav Huna amar adon kotvo Rav Chisda amar av kotvo. What about according to the opinion that says it's the father of this girl that writes it? He instead of the owner writing, behold, your daughter is my ivriya, it's the father that says, I am giving my daughter over to you, as in ama ivriya. We know that this is a machloket because we have a statement of two amoraim. Who writes it? Rav Huna says it's the master that writes it. Fine, so we have a good derivation according to Rav Huna. According to Rav Chisda, however, he says the father writes it. So Hanichal Rav Huna, we have a good derivation. El Rav Chisda ma'ika lememar, according to Rav Chisda, who says that it's the father that writes it, so it's the wrong way. Kiddushin, the groom writes the shtar. For ama ivriya, the father writes the shtar, so we need another derivation for Rav Chisda. And now keep this in mind, because at the end of this derivation, even Rav Chisda is going to use this pasuk for to help out, to bolster his argument, but it won't be a direct proof. So here's Rav Chisda, how Rav Chisda can derive shtar for ama ivriya and thereby for Eved Ivri in general. Amar Rav Acha bar Yaakov, Amar Kera lo teseh keset ha'avadim, aval nikneti kekinyan avadim, umay nihu shtar. Regarding an ama ivriya, it says she does not go out like regular male slaves go free, because a minor ama ivriya, once she becomes an adult, either she'll be married or she'll be sent away once she reaches 12 or so. So now we're going to infer from this that she does not leave the slavery in the same way, but we can infer from this that she is acquired in the same way as avadim, referring to Eved Kena'ani. And how is an Eved Kena'ani acquired? With a shtar. An Eved Kena'ani is like land. It's considered really like property. And so just like any property you can acquire with a shtar, so too, especially land, so too an Eved Kena'ani you can get with a shtar. And so this, a ma'ivriya, she does not leave the same way as Canaanite slaves, but she enters into it like a Canaanite slave. So that's the derivation for a shtar for ama ivriya, and thereby to any Eved Ivri. Hold on, if that's your derivation, then I could learn a different type of acquisition, which is hazakah. Hazakah for land would be to use the land. If I want to take possession of your land, I can go and start working the land, and then that will show that it's mine. Or if it's for a slave and I want to now acquire it, I can tell the slave, go carry my bags, shine my shoes, and then by the slave doing work for me, that's an act of acquisition. So if the derivation is she does not go out like the way slaves do, but she does enter into as a shivcha the way that slaves do, and Eved Kanani can be acquired by shtar, but also by chazakah, right? You do a sale by money, but then you actually make them work, and that's how you acquire them. So maybe it's including that an amay v'riyah can be acquired through chazakah, and maybe the proof is not for shtar. So Amar Kerav itnachaltem otam libnechem acharechem otam bechazakah velo acher bechazakah. But there's another pasuk regarding Eved Kanaani that says you will bequeath them to your children after you because they're really like property. When the owner dies, it goes to his children or to his heirs, and it has an extra word otam. They will be acquired through chazakah, but there's another type of slave, a Hebrew slave, that will not be acquired by chazakah. So we have two pesukim here. The one is to say that there is a type of acquisition like Eved Kanani, that's shtar. Another pasuk that is limiting, excludes chazakah. But now we ask, wait, how do you know it's this way? Maybe you could flip it the other way around, and this pasuk can include chazakah, and the other pasuk exclude shtar. Ve'ema otam bishtar velo acher bishtar. So say that you can acquire them with otam, that you can inherit them. That's with a shtar, meaning only an Eved Kanani you can do with a shtar, and not another with a shtar. Haketiv lo keset abadim. Yeah, but it says here, lo keset abadim, and we said that is with a shtar. So now, what if you say this is including a shtar and this one is excluding a shtar? Well, now we don't know what to do. Umara'ita. Well, why did you say in the first place that this one is including a shtar and this pasuk is excluding chazakah? Why not say this one is including a shtar, and then this one, maybe that's excluding chazakah? So I could read it that way also. So how do you know which way to read these pesukim? So we have to fall upon sevara. We're using reason to explain which pasuk belongs to which. It makes sense that we should include shtar as a way of acquiring an amay v'riyah, because it's also a way of divorcing a woman. You can divorce a woman with a get, and so that should be also apply to the acquisition of slaves. Hold on, chazakah also does something. If you have a convert who dies without any heirs, and his actual, his biological family is no longer his legal family, and so his property is up for grabs, and anyone who goes and takes it, let's say if it's land, uses it, can acquire. So chazakah is a form of acquisition over there. So maybe we should compare amay v'riyah to that. No, but regarding marriage laws, we don't find that chazakah is a way of acquiring in the realm of marriage laws, and therefore it makes more sense to use a shtar because that is relevant to marriage laws regarding a Jew, and therefore a contract would be relevant. Makes more sense to be relevant regarding an amay v'riyah. So it says she will not leave the way that avadim do. That's true, and but she is acquired the way avadim are acquired. So that would be with a shtar, and makes sense to say this is shtar and not chazakah, because shtar is something that is also used in regular marriage. So that makes sense to compare it. Okay, that's one way to derive it for Rav Chisda. Another way, even Rav Chisda can go back to that original pasuk that we used for Rav Huna. Rav Chisda could say, listen, my derivation is from these pasukim comparing to Eved Kanani. But if you want to know which one is which, is it including shtar or is it including chazakah? So you know what? Let's go with shtar. Because of imacheret, it's comparing amay v'riyah to Amayvriya to a regular marriage, and the regular marriage is with the shtad, so this should also be with the shtad. Now Rav Chisda said it goes the wrong way. It's the father writing it or versus the owner writing it. It's true, it's going the wrong way, but that derivation can at least guide us about how to explain this pasuk, that this is in fact including shtad for the acquisition of ama ivriya. Okay, good. So now we have derivations for both. Now we're going to wonder, what is Rav Huna going to do with that pasuk that the ama ivriya does not go out of marriage the way others do, which Rav Chisda used to learn that she can be acquired by shtad. But Rav Huna already has a different pasuk of the comparison, imacheret yikach lo. So what is he going to do? What is Rav Huna going to do with this pasuk? That's to teach me that and the Ma'avriyah does not go free if there's an injury to her limbs, the way an Eved would. If an Eved's limbs are injured, then an eye and so on, then the Eved Ivri goes free. But that's not true for an Ama Ivriya. Doesn't mean that the owner can do that. It just means if the owner would injure his Ama Ivriya or Eved Kanani, he would have to pay the same way you pay for if you injure another Jew. But it's not an automatic granting of freedom. So that's what it means. Lo teseh keset abadim. A regular Eved Kanani goes out by injury, but an Ama Ivriya or Eved Ivri does not go free through injury. But Rav Chisda ken nichtav kera lo teseh ka'abadim. My keset abadim shema amina tarte. Rav Chisda said, well then you could have written a simpler way. Lo teseh ka'abadim. Why I say keset abadim? From that extra word, we can learn two things from this pasuk, and so everybody can derive all of their laws that they hold and account for all the pesukim. The Mishnah next says, "V'koneh et asmo b'shanim." An Eved Ivri can acquire himself and go free by years. After he waits 6 years of work, then he goes free. How do you know? Dichtiv shesh shanim ya'avodu b'shivi'it yaseh lachofshi. He works 6 years, and then 7th year he goes free. So that's explicit. By Yovel, an Eved Ivri goes free in the Yovel. Dichtiv ad shenat Yovel ya'avod imach. It says so explicitly. He works until the Jubilee year. Ubigeda on kesef, by deduction of the amount of the purchase price. An Eved Ivri can be redeemed. Amar Chizkiya, Damar Kera vehefda, Melamed shemegareya pidyona veyosa. We learn this from Ama Ivriya. It says once she becomes an adult and he doesn't want to marry her or marry her off to his son, so he has to let her be redeemed. What does that mean? Let her be redeemed by deducting from the sale price the amount that she would need to be redeemed for. He has to give her a good deal so that even if there are more years left in terms of the 6 years, he has to deduct that and allow her to go free. Tana v'konet asmo bekesef ub'shaveh kesef ub'shtar. Now regarding redeeming a slave, we have a baraita that says that the slave can acquire himself through money, but also with something that is worth money. It doesn't have to actually be money. It can be any item that has some value. Also, he can use a shtar. Let's analyze. I understand that he can use actual money currency because it says if you redeem a slave, so you have to deduct from the amount, the money, the silver that he was bought for. So now from there you know that one can be bought with silver, and if you're deducting that specific amount, so that means he can redeem himself also with currency. Shaveh kesef name yashiv geulato. Amar Rachamana l'rabot shaveh kesef kechesef. And you can use something that's an equivalent of money because the pasuk continues and says, he shall give back the price of his redemption. So that's extra words coming to include anything that's even worth money. But how do you know? How could you use a shtar? If it means that you wrote a promissory note, an IOU, for the amount of money, if the redemption price is $100, so I write a note, I owe you $100. Well, then that's the same as money, right? It's just, this is an IOU, it's a check. that is redeemable for money, so that would be included in money. That's not shtar. Ella shichrur shtar lamali. So instead, if it's instead for to let him go, that you want, the owner is going to write, okay, I'm letting you go, and you're writing that in a shtar. Zil. Well, in that case, if you're just letting him go, he can just say in front of two witnesses or in front of a bet din, go, you're free. You don't need to put it in writing. You could just say it in an official setting. So what is the shtar doing? Amar Rava zot omeret aved ivri gufo kanui v'harav shemachal al geraon geraono and geraono machol. So Rava says we can learn from here that an eved ivri, even for an eved ivri also, not only eved kanani, eved ivri, the owner owns the body of the slave, and therefore just because he relinquishes the rights to the monetary part of him and says relinquishes the rights to the deduction amount, right? If there's $100 left, he says, you know what? You don't have to pay the $100. That's insufficient because, okay, while he said, okay, you don't have to pay the $100, still he didn't do an act to actually let him go. And that's why you need a document, a shtar, to make it official that not only do you not have to pay, but that you also did an action to emancipate that servant. The Mishnah continues and says, Yetera alav amah ha'ivriya, a female Hebrew slave has another way of going free beyond male, and that is by becoming 12, actually seeing the sign of puberty, which is 2 hairs. Amar resh lakish amah ivriya kona et asma b'mitat ha'av mirshut adon mikal v'chomer. We're going to bring in this Mishnah in a second as a challenge to the following statement. Resh Lakish says that an amah ivriya can receive her freedom if her father dies. She gets her freedom from her master, meaning the father, while he's alive, sells off his daughter into slavery to an owner. Now, if the owner dies, if any owner dies of Eved Ivri, the Eved Ivri Mavriya goes free. That we know already. Here, this Chidush is that if the father dies while she is a slave, she actually goes free. How does he know that? From a Kal Vachomer. Simanim she'en mosiin mershut av, mosiin mershut adon. Simanim, signs of na'arut, do not remove her from being under the authority of the father. Meaning, if she works and the salary goes to the father, that remains from 12 to 12 and a half. I'm using the years as averages. Whenever she sees signs, she's a na'ara, the father still gets her salary. And so it does not remove her. And yet, simanim does not remove her, but they do remove her from under the authority of her master. So you see that simanim are very powerful. Mita shemotziah mershut av enodin shemotziah mershut adon. If so, then mita, which does make her go free from under the authority of the av. So actually, mita is even more powerful than simanim, because simanim cannot get her out of the authority of the father, but mita can get her out of the authority of the father. So mita is stronger than simanim. So therefore, simanim, all the more, the death of the father should all the more so get her out of the authority of the master. Right? Right? Since the death of the father can get her out of the authority when she's with her father, all the more so it can get her out of the authority of the owner if she had already been sold into slavery. That's his Kal Vachomer. Meti Rav Oshaya says, no, it can't be. Our Mishnah lists only one way in which Amay can go out. That's in addition to a male, and that's through simanim. V'imita, and if it was true what you said in your Kal Vachomer that the death of the father can allow her to go free from the owner, nitne namen mitatav, the Mishnah should have said so, also the death of the father. So we answer, maybe not. Tana v'shiyer. It could be that the Mishnah is giving one example, but not giving all. It's not a comprehensive list, and so it left out. It give one example and left out one example. In order to say that, my shiyer dahai shiyer is a general rule that it's okay. The Mishnah sometimes gives just one or two examples and leaves out some examples, but only does that if it's leaving out at least two examples. You're not going to write etc. when there's only one more item. You only write etc. if there's at least two or more items, and you don't want to have to say everything. So then you'll leave out more items. So for this argument to work, there has to be another thing that's left out besides mitat ha'av. So what else is missing? Shier mitat ha'adon. Oh, the death of the master. She also goes free with the death of the master, right? No, imishu mitat ha'adon lav shiurahu dekevanti ika name beish lakatane. No, the death of the master, that also applies for a male. So that's not a way in which a ma'ivriya goes free that a male servant does not. So this is not considered something that's an omission. So we're down to just one thing that's omitted. So you should have said it. So why doesn't it say mitat ha'av? Tana davar sheyesho kitzba katane, davar she'eno kitzba lo katane. The transmitter or the author of this Mishnah included something that has a fixed limit, a set time, and that's why it included simanim. But something that does not have a fixed time does not. And the death of the father, who knows if he's going to live till 60 or 80 or 120. So that's why it doesn't mention the death of the father. But really, it could have mentioned the death of the father, and so you see it's missing. That's why it's not here, even though there's only one thing missing from it. But it's not the fact of shied. It's just that it's not listing all types of ways that she can go out. Only a type of freedom that has a definite time period. Now we ask about this one. Simanim v'hasimanim de'en lahem kisba v'katani. Wait, but simanim actually does not have a set time. Not every girl sees signs exactly on her 12th birthday. You never know when it's going to be. Amar Rav Sefra en lahem kisba lemala aval yesh lahem kisba lemata. Rav Sefra actually it does have a time limit. It doesn't have a maximum time limit. In other words, never know if it's going to be at 12, 13, 14, 15. But it does have a lower limit under which the signs are not considered signs, and that's under 9 years old, as we see here. The Tanya ben tesha shanim shebishete sa'arot shuma. This praita seems to actually be talking about a boy, but it's a similar concept for a girl. A boy less than 9 years old who sees 2 hairs, we say that's just a mole. It's not considered a sign of puberty. Ben tesha shanim v'yom echad ad ben shetem esre shana v'yom echad v'odan bo shuma. From 9 until 12, it's still considered just a mole. Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda Omer siman. And Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda says during that time period that is considered a sign. Ben shelosh esre shana v'yom echad dibra kol simanim. But from 13 years and 1 day on, everyone agrees that would be a sign. So you see that under 9 years old, that's a minimum. And so there's no way, according to any opinion, that under 9 years old, a siman will be, hairs will be considered a siman. So you see that there is a minimum absolute date, even though there's no maximum date, you never know if it could be 13, 13 and a half, 14, who knows. Okay, good. Mativ Rav Sheshat. Rav Sheshat brings another challenge against Rish Lakish's Kal Vachomer that an Amavriya can go free when her father dies. And from the follows, Rabbi Shimon Omer Braita teaches in the name of Rabbi Shimon that Ba'ama Nikim Lahem Shlosha Be'ish Shlosha Be'isha. There are 4 ways that slaves in general can go free and they will receive a severance gift. Of these 4, 3 of them apply to a male slave and 3 of them to an ama ivriya. In other words, there are 3 there's 2 that overlap, and then 1 more applies to man only, and 1 of them applies to a woman only. And you cannot say that all 4 of them apply to one or the other, because one of the ways that someone goes free is through signs. That applies only to ama ivriya. And one of them is yovel, for someone who had his ear pierced. That applies only to a male slave, not a female, as we're going to explain further. So what you see here is that it says 4 ways. 2 of them overlap, and that would be years or yovel, if it's within that 6 years, as we're gonna enumerate. But what you see here is that does not include mitata baal, mitata av, v'mita nitnena me mitata av. of Resh Lakish, if you are correct that the death of the father allows an Amaivriya to go free from her owner, then that should have been listed as one of the ways in which a woman goes free but not a man. If you're going to say, oh, this one, in this case also, it was not a comprehensive list, it left out something. Yeah, but here it actually says 4 ways, which makes it sound like it's comprehensive. Here's all the 4 ways. דבר שיש לו קצבה קטנה ודבר שאין לו קצבה לא קטנה והסימנים דאין להם קצבה וקטנה. And if you say that this Tana is only mentioning things that have a fixed time period, but if it does not have a fixed time, then it's not mentioning them, and that's why it doesn't mention the death of the father, because you don't know how long he's going to live. But that can be because it mentions signs, which also we don't know exactly when she is going to develop signs. 12, before, after, around then. And maybe you'll bring Rav Safra in here also that says, well, it doesn't have a maximum time, but it does have a minimum time. One of the ways that someone goes free is the death of the master, which has no fixed time period, and yet this is included in one of the 4. No, mitat adon na melaketane. No, death of the master also is not included in one of these 4. We're assuming it was. So what are the 4 if it's not death of the master? So what are the 4? The follow shanim v'yovel shadesiya ve'amayvriya besimanim. It's years. If 6 years are up, that applies to a man and a woman. Yovel, within that 6 years, that also applies to a man and a woman. Furthermore, one that applies only to a man is Yovel Shel Ritzi'ah. You see, beforehand we were assuming that Yovel and Yovel Shel Ritzi'ah was all one, and maybe the other one was Adon, the death of the master. But now we're splitting it into 2. So these 2 Shanim Yovel apply to the man and the woman. Yovel Shel Ritzi'ah, only a male slave can be Nirsa, not a female. V'Ama'ivriya b'simanim, and the female, if Ama'ivriya, if she sees signs, then she goes free. That's the one that applies only to the woman. And so you see here, it is not including the death of anyone, not the death of the father and not the death of the master, because those are things that do not have a fixed time. We only want to know, like, when will it definitely happen that she can or he can count on it, that, oh, if I just wait this number of years, then I'll be able to go free. And in fact, this interpretation makes a lot of sense. The Katani Sefa, the continuation of the Braita, actually says that explicitly. You should have had patience and read the whole thing. You cannot apply all 4 ways of leaving slavery and getting compensation you can't apply all 4 to either a man or a woman, because simanim does not apply to a man, and a female slave cannot become nirsa, so it doesn't leave in the yovel as a nirsa. If you're going to count also the death of the father, then you're going to have, if that's one of them, then you're going to have all 4 that actually apply to her, and that can't be Shema Amina. So you know what? It's in fact right that we do not include the death of the father, because it's something that has no fixed limit, and therefore the Shakish has survived another day. However, he is not going to survive forever, because we have yet another challenge against his Kal Vachomer. Mativ Rav Amram ve'elu ma'anikim lahem hayoseh bashanim bayovel ubemita ta'adon ve'amayvriya besimanim. So the following can get a severance gift: someone who leaves after the 6 years, or because of Yovel, or the death of the master, or Ma'ivriya, she has an additional one that she goes free when she sees signs of maturity. Ve'im ita nitnena mimitat av. If it's true, Resh Lakish, what you say, that the death of the father allows her to go free, then it should have been included on this list. If you say, well, it's not a comprehensive list, it's leaving someone out, but the word elu, these are, suggests that it is a comprehensive list. And maybe you'll say, as we did before, it's only mentioning things that have a fixed limit, not if it doesn't have a fixed limit. Well, but it's including signs, which it does not have a fixed limit, so it should include death of the father also, and that is in the list. And if for that you're going to say, like Rav Sifra, that there's no maximum, but there is a minimum limit of time, well, then what are you going to do about the death of the master, which is for sure in this list explicitly? We have no answer to this, and since in this list it mentioned the death of the master, even though it has no fixed limit, it should have mentioned the death of the father, and also it says Elu, which sounds like it's a comprehensive list. From the fact that this list does not mention the death of the father means that it in fact is not one of the ways in which a Ama Ivriya goes free, and so Resh Lakish is contradicted conclusively by this baraita. Now, however, we ask a more substantive question. Even though Resh Lakish's example, the law that he wanted to bring of the death of the father is not in that braita, but still, what about his kal vachomer? Right? It seemed a logical conclusion. V'haresh Lakish kal vachomer amar. So how are you going to refute his kal vachomer just because it's not in that source, but he has a logical proof? And the answer is kal vachomer piricha. This is a kal vachomer that we can refute. Mishum di'iga lemifrach. Ma l'simanim shenishtana haguf. Tomar mitata you're comparing apples to oranges. When it comes to simanim, it changes her physical body. Now she is mature. Beforehand she wasn't. She goes from a kitana to a ne'ara. And therefore it makes sense to say, who was sold into slavery? A kitana. Now she's a different person. She has a different body. And that's why she goes free. She can't be owned anymore by that master. That is fundamentally different from the death of the father, where her body does not change. So just because the death of the father gets her out from under the authority of the father, which I would say actually just makes sense because there is no father, so she can't be under the authority of the father when he dies. But even so, by getting simanim under her father, it does not completely change the authority of the father, because that's just the nature of parenthood, fatherhood, that he retains some rights over her. But in terms of selling her body to slavery, and now she's a different body, you can't compare that to the death of the father, and that's how we break the kal vachomer. All right, so now we've proven that Resh Lakish's example, his law is not in the braita, and we have a way to refute his kal vachomer. Nevertheless, we're going to attempt one last time to say maybe there is a braita that does confirm Resh Lakish's opinion. Because look at these two contradictory baraitot. Taneh hada. Enek aibed aibri la'asmo ve'anek amaibri la'asma. The first baraita says that the severance package for an Eved Ivri, he keeps. And that for an amaivriya, after she goes free, she keeps. V'tanya idach, enek amaivriya mesi'ata la'aviyah ve'en l'rabba ela sechar batala bilbad. The second baraita would agree that for a male, he keeps his severance package. However, for an ama ivriya, her severance package, and if she finds an item, it goes to the father. Meaning, even while she's an Ama Ivriya, she finds a wallet with $1,000, and there's no name. So she keeps the $1,000, and it goes to the father. Now, what about the master? Doesn't the master own her handiwork? Yes, the master owns her work, but not her findings. So therefore, let's say she was in the field, and now she stopped for 5 minutes to pick up this wallet. So that time, the 5 minutes of lost time, lost labor, how much is that worth? Right? Figure how much does she get an hour, and according to her sale price and all that. So let's say that's worth $1, right? So the master will get $1 because she wasn't working for that 5 minutes, but the $1,000 goes to her father. So that's the second opinion. The main point here is the contradiction between the severance package. The first baraita says it goes to she keeps it. The second one says it goes to her father. How can we account for this contradiction? My lab had nafka besimanim, had nafka lab b'mitata av. Is it not that, the first baraita, where she keeps it herself, why does she keep it? Because the father had died. She goes free through the father dying. So that's why the father doesn't get it. She keeps it herself. The second baraita is where she leaves because she became mature. The father is still around, and that's why the father gets it. What do you prove from here, if indeed this is a good resolution of these baraitot, that there is a baraita that follows Resh Lakish, that she would go free. The baraita that says she keeps it herself is when the father died, and she went free because the father died. Isn't that a good proof that for Resh Lakish? And we say no. La idi v'idi nafka la b'simanim. We could explain that both of them is that she got free because of simanim. V'la kashya. And nevertheless, there's no contradiction between the baraitot. Ha de'ite la'av ve'ha de'lete la'av. The second baraita, where it says the father gets it, that's where the father is still alive. And the first baraita is when the father had died. She didn't go free because the father died. The father sold her into slavery. Then she died. Then he died while she was still a slave. She remains a slave. And then when she becomes mature, then she goes free. She keeps the money because the father isn't around. And so, sorry, we did not find any baraita that can be a source for a backup for Resh Lakish. Now, regarding this law itself, we understand why the severance package from Avriya she should keep. Why do you have to say that? It's to exclude her brothers. Right, her brothers would not have a right to it. Even if the father had died and she gets this item, it's not like this money would go to the father, and then since the father died, the brothers who inherit the father would take it. No. Detanya, v'idnachatem otam libnechem acharechem, otam libnechem v'lo benotechem libnechem, mekan she'en adam morish zechut bito libno. How do you know that? Even though in general, all the father's property, if there are sons, will go to the sons. Well, we learn this from this pasuk that says, you will bequeath them, meaning an Eved Kanaani, to your children, to your sons after you. And we derive only the Eved Kanaani gets inherited by the sons, but not your daughters, meaning, and we learn from here that something, a zichut bita, something that is coming to a daughter, like a severance package, if the daughter was sold into slavery, that's something that she has a right to. The rights of a daughter do not get inherited to the son. The daughters keep it, even though the rest of his property goes to the sons, but something that the daughter deserves, she gets, and that's why this baraita is teaching us that the severance package of Ma'avriya, of course it doesn't go to the father if the father's dead, but it does not even go to the heirs of the father, her brothers. She keeps it herself. That's what the baraita wanted to teach me in that line. But we still have a question. How come the baraita had to mention that in Eved Ivri, he gets to keep his einik? We're talking about just an adult, Eved Ivri. Where else would it go? Who else could get it? Amar Rav Yosef, Yod Keret Kahazena Hacha. Rav Yosef said, I see here a small letter that has been made into a large city. In other words, really it was not necessary for the Tanakh to teach this, but it's just, even though it's not anything new, he made many words from a small point, right? Something that could have been said in a small thing, like a Yud. A Yud is the smallest letter. It's like just saying one dot, right, became expanded into a large city. And in fact, there's nothing specifically new here. Abaye amar hachi amar Rav Sheshat. Hamane tuta'ehu. Detanya tuta'e omer. Lo velo leba'al chovo. Abaye, however, says, no, could be a chidush in this line if we say it's the opinion of tuta'e, because in this baraita he says, law, that the Eved Ivri receives his severance package and not a creditor to whom he owes money. The creditor, we saw this yesterday, cannot go to the owner and said, wait, this slave that you freed, he owes me money, so give the money straight to me. No, even if you say in general that A owes B and B owes C, that A can go and B owes money to C, that C can go collect all the way back from A, even if you say that's true in general. Here, regarding a severance package, it goes to the slave himself and not to the creditor, and that's the chidush of that line in the baraita. Good. Gufa. Now that we mentioned that Baraita with all the people who deserve a severance package, we quoted part of it, we're going to quote the entirety. Elu manikim lahem. Hayoseh bashanim ubayovel umitat adon v'amay v'riyah besimanim. The following go free and receive a severance package. Someone who leaves, a slave who leaves after a full term of 6 years, or someone who leaves because the Yovel came. So here it just says one type of Yovel, any Yovel, whether it's during the 6 years or a Nirsa. Also, if the owner dies, Eved Ivri does not get passed on to heirs. And also, Amay Vriya, she goes free if she sees signs of maturity. Aval Borech v'yoseh beged kesef en manikim lo. However, a slave that runs, Eved Ivri, that runs away, or that is redeemed with money, a reduction price of money, does not get a severance package. The Gemara will explain why. Rabbi Meir Omer, Borech en manikim lo, v'yoseh beged kesef manikim lo. Rabbi Meir disagrees. He agrees regarding a runaway that you don't give him a severance package. He ran away, but as like an employee that quits, you don't have to give him a severance package, only if you fire them, or the end of the contract. But someone who is redeemed with money, that's a legitimate way of leaving, so that person does deserve a severance package. Rabbi Shimon Omer. Rabbi Shimon, it's not clear if he's saying the same thing as Tanakama or not. It can be interpreted to be the same or otherwise. The Rishonim deal with that. He says what we said before. There are 4 ways for the slave can go free and deserve a severance. 3 of them apply to men only, and 3 of them apply to women only. You can't apply all 4 to any one gender because one of them is leaving with signs of maturity that applies only to the female, and that it's that Yovel for a Nirsa. Nirsa goes free in Yovel, that applies only to a male. Good. Now we ask about this Braita. What's the source? The Pesukim themselves talk about someone leaving after 6 years, that you should give them the severance package. So the Torah explicitly only says it about that. So I might have thought maybe only someone that works for a full term of 6 years receives a severance package, and not someone who leaves slavery in any of the other ways. How do you know that we should include the other items of someone who is freed because of the Jubilee year or because the owner died? Or who sees signs? From the extra word, it doesn't just say send them, but and should you send them? The extra word vechi comes to include these other categories. Now, since you're including things, why not also include a runaway and someone who's redeemed by the deduction of the sale price? Talmud Lomar vechi teshalechenu chovshi me'imach misha shilucho me'imach yoseh yasa boreach v'yoseh begeron kesef she'en shilucho me'imach. It says if you should send the slave free from yourself, only if you are setting him free, right, by some legitimate action, or some anticipated way, which would be all those 3. They finished their 6 years. Yovel came, the Simanim came, the owner died. These are all regular ways in which the owner is agreeing and or anticipated or happen automatically, or because of something the owner did, including dying, I guess, and that's why they go free. So that's all included. But it's not called that you sent him free if he ran away. Certainly not. Or if someone came and redeemed him, or he redeemed himself. The owner did. The owner might not want that to happen, but this happened. The owner didn't send him away. He acquired his own freedom. So then, in those 2 cases, no severance. Rabbi Meir Omer borech en manikin lo den shilucho me'imach. Rabbi Meir agrees regarding a runaway. That's not called that you sent him away. He ran away. Aval Yosef begeron kesef sheshilucho me'imach. But he thinks that if he's redeemed, that's a legitimate way of him acquiring his freedom. freedom, and that's also called that he is sent from you, that you grant his freedom because they paid you the rest of the money that he had owed, and therefore that person does deserve a severance according to Rabbi Meir. Borech hashlama ba'eh detanya minayin leborech shechayav lahashlim. Now we ask about a runaway. Wait a second, the runaway, he still has to come back, right? Let's say he runs away after 3 years, and now, he's caught, he has to come and finish off his years. Because we see in the Braita, how do you know that a runaway still is obligated to finish his years? You don't say, so since he ran away, that's it, he's gone. He has to serve all 6. Therefore, after the 6 years are finished, so let him get a severance because at that point he finished all the 6 years. The Braita continues and notes that, well, what if he got sick in the middle? He worked for 3 years and it's not runaway, but he got sick. So then for 3 years or whatever, however long, does he have to go and make up those years? Because it says he has to work for 6 years. And so after, whenever he gets better, he has to finish off the remaining time? No, that's why the Pasuk says, and the 7th year he goes free. If he worked some time and then he got sick and couldn't work, and nevertheless, once the 6 years are up, he goes free because even though it says he has to work 6 years, it also adds, and the 7th he goes free. The 7th he goes free no matter what. That's true. However, if he runs away in the middle, he has to go and make up his time. Since he has to go make up his time, in the end, if he does come back and make up his time, he worked all 6 years. So then he should deserve severance. So how come everyone says that a runaway does not get severance? That's the question. Amarav Sheshat Hachav Ma'iskenan Kegon Shebarachu Paga Bo Yovel. You're right. That person would get severance if he worked for 3 years, ran away, eventually came back, worked the other 3 years. He finished all his 6 years. That he deserves severance. You're right. Here, the Baraita is talking about a slave that ran away, and while he worked for 3 years, then he ran away, and in the meantime, Yovel came. Now he's free, because he would be free no matter what. He does not have to go back and finish off the 3 years. Now, I would have thought since Yovel came, and now he's free because of Yovel, so that's called that you sent him away, like a regular slave who's still around as a slave, and Yovel makes him go free. And I would have thought maybe I don't give him a fine. That's it, the Yovel. And he gets severance. Kamash malan. That's why this Baraita had to come and teach. No, not so. If he ran away and didn't finish his service, and in the meantime Yovel came and set him free, he loses his right to his severance. Baruch Adonai Olam. Amen ve'amen.